Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, which is the next in our series of well-architected discussions. This time we're here to talk about the security pillar. So I'm Matt, I'm one of the senior solutions architects at Zen. I do a lot of work, spend a lot of my time on AWS and around well-architected. And I'm joined by my colleague Callum. Let's say hi, Callum.
Sure, thanks Matt. Yeah, my name's Callum Shackleton. I'm a senior engineer working on the AWS team here at Zen. I've been engineering in this space for about 3.5 years, and a lot of my role is the remediation work for our well-architected reviews.
Great stuff, thank you. Right, let's get right into it. Certainly wanted to just cover off a little bit as we get started, just around our Microsoft work and our relationship with AWS. So we've been growing our practice with AWS for around 6 years now. And as a result of that, we've had some great engagements and we've developed lots of skills and experience. We have a lot of people with a lot of certifications and a lot of, I guess, time working with our customers around well-architected and non-well-architected as well. You'll see here the Microsoft badges, and there's no coincidence. We've been working with Microsoft and we've been a Gold partner for around 15 years. So we have this marriage of Microsoft skills and AWS, and that's one of the things that we really are known for. So we're one of the launch partners for EC2 workloads in EC2, and we're currently aiming for a competency around SQL Server on AWS as well. But to go further into well-architected itself, if you didn't see the introductory sessions, just to try and give a quick overview of that, this is really around giving our customers an opportunity to improve what they're doing in AWS. Where you start on this journey in AWS can be really daunting because there is so much to consider. But this is really helpful. It gives us some structure and some guidance that we can follow with our customers. It is in effect a definition of best practice. It's been informed by loads of experience against all sorts of environments, big and small, and with all sorts of different purposes from AWS's perspective. And it's anchored to these 5 different pillars that you see here. So we have operations, reliability, performance, efficiency, and cost. Of course, we're here today to talk about the security pillar in particular. This is what we shared, this particular slide, when we first went through the introductory stuff. I won't dwell on this too much, but I guess just to really sum up, when we talk around security in AWS, this is about the ability for organizations to protect their assets and their data in the cloud. There's a real focus on keeping data confidential, on maintaining integrity, and of course the availability of systems as well. So we spend a lot of time looking at different tools, different processes even, and all the different techniques that we can use to achieve this through detection, through prevention, and through recovery as well. Not specific to any one pillar, it's really important that customers have a good view of the shared responsibility model, which is fairly well known in AWS circles. And what this is really showing us is that it's so important to consider what you're responsible for when it comes to operations and security in AWS and what AWS will do for you. Now, this moves around a little bit according to the sort of service that you're looking at. I know when I started working with AWS, a lot of customers did not want to consider cloud because they were concerned about security. That can still sometimes be the case, but actually more and more the people I talk to are really interested in improving their security posture by moving to AWS because there's so much good stuff going on in there, and so much that we see customers achieving. But we don't want to be too complacent, and you have a lot of things to consider as well. So shown here in orange are the things that AWS take responsibility for when it comes to security. So you can think around, it's got the breakdown of regions and availability zones. So here you can think about the data centers, the physical environments, access to those facilities, and how that's controlled. Also consider the underlying networks, the servers, the storage, the hypervisors, and all that sort of thing. When we move into the blue, this is what you as a customer are responsible for when it comes to security. So for a infrastructure service such as EC2, you're going to be really concerned with how you take care of, how you select and deploy your operating systems, the software and the data that you host on top of that. And you have choices as to where you put that and to how you protect it, what access you provide. And of course, things that support that. So not around the instances or the workload specifically, but the network that it sits on and how you provide visibility around that and how you control traffic going in and out and between your various resources there. We're going to dive into a few of the different best practice areas, and there's no better place to start here than identity and access management. Now, there is a service named AWS IM, which is specifically for dealing with a lot of the considerations around this, but it goes beyond that as well. And this is effectively about controlling the people or the services and the applications and anything else that may need access to your AWS environment. So a lot of this is around controlling, what resources can be requested and delivered, changed, deleted, and all sorts of different areas like that. It does bleed into your applications as well, in terms of how those are secured when it comes to user management and credential management. Callum, I guess we have this checklist here with a few ideas in there, but would you be able to give us a bit of a tour of some of the highlights for this from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to just call out a few services and options around this. So I think at the top of the list there, we've got protect the root user. Now this is critical, really. These are the keys to your castle for a given AWS account. And you really don't want to be using your root user credentials on a daily basis. It's best to secure that. Use IAM, create yourself a dedicated user for kind of traceability and security reasons, and really protect that root user. And in terms of authenticating as a user into your AWS account, you might want to consider using things like single sign-on, especially if you've got a directory store already, such as Active Directory. On the web application side of it as well, services like Cognito can really help with that whole user sign-in and sign-up side of things. So Cognito, a fully managed service to really take some of that heavy lifting away from user authentication. With your users as well, you want to have a good authentication practice. So you want a password policy set for those console logins, and MFA as well for that two-factor security, up in that security posture for your programmatic and console access. In terms of your applications as well, you really want to make use of roles. Those are ideal. You don't want to be creating IAM users for use within your systems and applications. So you want to get the appropriate SDK for the language you're using and make use of roles for your systems to be able to authenticate and talk to AWS services. With both users and systems as well, you want to strive for the principle of least privilege. So this is all about just giving your users and systems just enough access to perform their intended function and nothing more. The last thing you want is a vulnerable system, or a system that's been compromised that's then got a lot of permission to further compromise or elevate an attacker's Also, you want to consider not storing secrets in code. You really want to avoid that wherever possible. Whether that's a file in S3 with appropriate security around access to that file, that is a good starting point. But also, Amazon have services in this space, such as Secrets Manager and Parameter Store, that are really designed for storing your secrets and allowing you to programmatically access those secrets again, only with the systems or the users that need access to those, and also adding traceability and logging around the access that occurs against those secrets. So really, really useful stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that, Callum. And I couldn't agree more. It's really common that we see customers with hard-coded credentials, either for AWS, user credentials, or for their applications, or maybe things like database credentials, things like that, just dumped into config files or stored in code, and they've got a really nasty habit of escaping. So, yeah, using some of these tools like the use of roles and secrets managers are really powerful. Good stuff. A little note on infrastructure protection. So this is really about protecting the resources that you have in AWS, in particular network and compute side of things. A lot of consideration, and I've got a lot of interest in the denial of service mitigation here as well. But there are tons of things that can be done using traditional methods and a lot of the more cloud native and modern practices as well. Again, Callum, over to you. What are your top tips here?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So one of the key things that we see quite a few times is customers not having a really good VPC in place. So the VPC is a service that allows you to define your own kind of section of the cloud and configure your own networking and network space and subnets across availability zones and with that security groups. So it's really key having that foundational good VPC design in place on which you place your resources. Because then it will allow you to place your resources in maybe private subnets and away from the internet, reducing that attack surface. So a good VPC setup and design at the beginning is crucial. You can fix that after the fact, but there is more effort involved in that. With that as well, with a good VPC in place, you start to take on services like elastic load balancing for your scaling web applications, or CloudFront and S3 for your content delivery, and maybe static asset storage. Services such as Route 53 and API Gateway, again, are really good services to sit your applications behind and really take advantage of some of that Amazon scale and built-in security. Just by using some of those services mentioned there as well, you've got a level of DDoS protection built in without having to do anything extra. With those services in place, you can then consider the web application firewall, or AWS WAF, again, which nicely feeds into services like ELB and CloudFront. So WAF lets you create web application firewall rules, so you can really control who's got access to your resources, lots of different layers of your application stack. With your resources placed appropriately and WAF rules in place, then you can turn your attention to maybe your instances, compute instances, and just really ensuring they're hardened and locked down. So this could be turning off processes or services that you don't actually need, patching a good patching policy in place on your systems, tightening the security groups as well that live around those instances, so only the right ports are open, and ideally, wherever possible, disabling remote access onto those systems. So this is RDP and SSH. If you can avoid accessing those systems, you can switch this off, and that really helps to lock down that instance. Tools like Systems Manager can really help you manage your EC2 estates. So that's great for issuing remote commands and pulling information off. And security services like Inspector can help continuously validate the security best practice of your instances to ensure that they are hardened and remain that way. Also, as well, it's really worth looking beyond EC2, critically so in some cases. So it's important not to forget that if you use S3 or RDS or Elasticache services like this, then they've got their whole set of security settings that you can configure, such as encryption and security groups in some cases, and also permissions to access those services. So don't forget about those alongside your instances. Another big area you can consider as well is serverless architectures, so Fargate for container services and Lambda. If you were to use these in place of traditional instances, then you've got a far smaller surface area for attack. You've got other security considerations that you need to take into account, but they do help mitigate some of the more traditional attacks just by virtue of the fact there is no port open in the case of Lambda, and it's all event driven.
Great stuff. Thank you, Callum. Yeah, there's a really good mix of different services and different controls that can be put into place here. I know one area that I was thinking about was the web application firewall. So thank you for covering that. Is that something that's difficult to get started with? Is there any help out there about how to deploy rules and where to go with that?
Yeah, so there's definitely quick start guides provided by Amazon. So a CloudFormation template they provide on their website for free, which you can deploy in a few minutes, and it has a really good setup built in that can help get you started. They've designed a series of rules using a lot of different rule types. You can choose exactly what you want to switch on and off, and you can apply that to your load balancer or API gateway or CloudFront distribution.
Great stuff. And I guess from there you can customize that and take it further.
Yeah, absolutely. And the service itself is quite easy to get going with. A couple of hours and you'll be up to speed and you'll know how it all works and pieces together.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Callum. Let's move on, and we're going to take a look at data protection. Of course, this is a really hot topic for a lot of businesses, and of the highest value when it comes to assets in the cloud is often data. So this is important because of all sorts of reasons. Really, there's real reputational damage to be done if data is leaked. There's regulatory, drivers to make sure that this is in good shape as well, so everybody's aware of things like GDPR and the obligations that everybody has around that. So it's really important that we know what data we're putting in the cloud. We know where we're putting it. We control who has access to it, what they can do with it, and that we do everything that we can to make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands or indeed get altered or deleted. So I guess this really often focuses on protecting data at rest and in transit or in flight. And there are lots of different approaches to doing this. So again, Callum, I think you're going to give us a little tour of what some of the options are around here and what some of the best practice we recommend is.
Yeah, sure. So the top of the list we've got here, apply encryption at rest where possible. This for me is a bit of a no-brainer when it comes to AWS, really, because they make it so easy and so simple. In a lot of cases, it's just a tick box. And beyond that, you don't have to worry about anything else. There's no performance hit, a very, very little cost hit as well. So for services like EBS volumes or S3 buckets, simply ticking the box helps you to achieve this. And beyond that, AWS have a wealth of security services, but a couple in this space are KMS, so the key management service, which allows you to create or adopt AWS keys within their service for your own use in encryption of data or data at rest or data in flight if you want your application to use those keys as well. It also offers other features like rotating and tightly controlled permissions and also auditing of access to those keys. Another one to mention as well is the certificate manager. So again, this is SSL TLS certificates provided for free and fully managed in Amazon service. So if you've got an elastic load balancer, you can create a public certificate for free in Certificate Manager and have Certificate Manager apply it to your load balancer and also update it when that certificate expires as well. So you don't have to worry about the dreaded certificate expiry issue anymore, assuming you're using the elastic load balancer. Moving on beyond those, we think it's really important to have a data classification policy in place. So just understand your different levels of classification for your data. And a good way to apply that to your resources is having a good tagging policy, so resource tagging. So if you tag all your resources that host data or even process data, such as systems, with an appropriate tag that matches your policy, then you can use services like AWS Config to go and check the compliance of those resources against your data policy. So we think it's really critical to have those two things in place. And finally, we mentioned TLS and IPSec here, but this is all about data in flight. AWS services are all encrypted, so all APIs from AWS are encrypted by default. You can't talk to them any other way. So that side's covered. But if you're talking between your systems or your services, then it's really important to encrypt this communication wherever possible. And again, with services like KMS and ACM available, it's great to take advantage of those and really build security of your data in flight into your applications.
Great stuff. Yeah, I mean, I love the KMS and the certificate manager products. They're Amazon talk about undifferentiated heavy lifting and trying to remove jobs that offer very little value to customers, but that are potentially quite difficult to and are expensive to deploy. And yeah, they're two great examples there, because actually generating and storing and managing encryption keys or the trickery around managing certificates as well. It's not a job that anybody wants to do really, but it's really important that it's done well. This is about the security and integrity of all this data. So yeah, this just takes a lot of that headache away. So it's really powerful stuff. Let's take a look at detective controls. So this is really about providing good visibility. Visibility is really important in AWS anyway, or in any environment, for a whole number of reasons. It touches all of the pillars when it comes to well architected. So you'll want to know all about what you're spending in AWS. You want to know how you're performing, how reliable you are, and of course you want logs and data available to help when it comes to diagnostics, but it's just as important, maybe more important, when it comes to security as well, to make sure you have information that can help you understand that there may be an event that needs to be investigated, and to help you then with, let's call it forensics, actually investigating what has happened, making fixes and bringing things back into service. And there is a real treasure chest of tools available here. So again, Callum, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So a lot of services from Amazon produce logs, services such as CloudTrail and Config, even S3 Access or VPC network flow. So it's critical to enable these logs. Again, it's generally a tick box exercise and the costs are quite low. Also, beyond the AWS side of things, your own application as well. So services like CloudWatch have an agent which you can deploy onto your instances and pull off application logs if you're writing those out to your instances. So it's critical to enable these logs because it's the first point in which to build your security practice around having those logs available, which you can then look to inspect. So with those logs in place, ideally you want to pull them all centrally so you can analyze them all as a whole. So you can send them into S3 buckets, and try and centralize them there, or you can even bring them into CloudWatch logs in a lot of cases. Or if you're more familiar with Elasticsearch, there are ways to push your logs into Elasticsearch as well and view them through a Kibana dashboard. But with your logs enabled and centralized, you can then look to try and find events of interest or suspicious activity. And for that, again, you've got a few options. So with CloudWatch logs, you've got metric filters, looking for queries, creating metrics out of those. You've also got log insights, which provides visualizations around queries that you want to perform against all your log data in CloudWatch logs. Another great service, Athena. So Athena can treat your raw S3 data like a SQL database without having to actually build a SQL database. So this is really powerful. You can write SQL query syntax and just run that against raw S3 data and get output from that. So really powerful stuff. Alongside that, we've got AWS managed services, so services like Guard Duty, which offer continuous monitoring of your AWS account and network activity using built-in machine learning and AI to generate findings of suspicious activity. So it raises events around things it detects. Like some examples are port scanning happening against your instances. It can detect that, and also changes within your account. So if you've got a password policy in place and that has been weakened, so maybe dropped down, that's suspicious. So again, Guard Duty picks up against those and many others and flags an event. One other service worth mentioning is Macy as well. So a fairly new service, offers machine learning to help identify sensitive information that you store in S3. Also includes how and when that data was accessed. It will create a baseline of your activity, and then it can alert you on anomalies or suspicious behavior outside of that baseline. So really powerful stuff. And another service as well that's really great, Security Hub. So this brings a lot of those services I've previously mentioned under one roof. So you can get a really good feel for the security posture of your account in one place, in one window.
Great stuff. Thank you, Callum. Yeah, it sounds like there's a real breadth of logs and data sources available here, but equally there are lots of ways to bring that together and actually make good use of that when you need it as well, which is really good to hear. And that feeds really quite neatly into the next section, I guess, which is all around incident response. So this is all about, okay, you've detected an event, something has happened, and you need to investigate that. And I guess it focuses on both preparing for that in terms of, having a plan, but also actually what are you going to do once something happens as well? How are you going to respond, and the potential to practice that? So what are your thoughts around this, Callum?
Yeah, sure. So I guess this is one area that we see is kind of weak in a lot of cases when we speak to customers. But it's very important to have something in place because it really will help during one of those incidents or situations. So having a plan in place is good. So it's worth calling out the difference between a run book and a playbook here. So where a run book might tell you how to resolve a specific event, so maybe an alarm, a playbook will tell you how to have certain things in place to help you handle a situation effectively and efficiently. So having a plan in place, a playbook, if you will, is really going to help you in those situations. And that might include things such as who's going to be involved in an issue handling process. How will you communicate between each other? What steps might you want to take to contain that issue, and also look into that problem? So a plan is crucial. Once you've got a plan in place, then any processes in there that could be automated should ideally be automated through event-driven architecture designs. So this is going to offer speed and consistency, and guarantee that every time, which is going to be far better than some engineer at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to handle this and remember to do everything in the right order as quickly as possible. And rounding that off as well, it's great to have a plan and even automation in place, but it's even better to practice this, ensure your plan is solid, test it out, simulate failures or security incidents, and really hone that plan and make sure it's going to work for you at the time that you need it most.
Yeah, good advice. Thank you, Callum. I think there's so much to cover in this area. And I think that potential for automation that you talked about is really exciting. That ability to automatically receive an alert that, something has happened over here, and for something to respond and, to try and go and contain that, wrapping security events around it or shutting something down, snapshotting data, whatever it might be, can be done really quickly. So yeah, really good stuff. Thank you. A few thoughts really on exactly how we might put this together. My apologies for skipping around there. So these are the different best practice areas that we've talked around so far. And I guess really what this shows is that this is about defense in depth and having a really broad and varied approach to security that goes as deep as you can go. I think in terms of where to start with this, that really is a daunting prospect for a lot of customers, depending on where you are right now. And what I would say is really think about where you are on this journey. So how mature are you? How mature do you need to be? And what are your priorities, or what are your threats? So do you care more about availability, about data loss, about costs, and do you have really firm compliance obligations? And that should start to steer you in the right direction. I think the good news is that we often see really lots of low-hanging fruit, and in not a lot of time, we can make a really big difference into the security posture for our customers. And so while there are some larger tasks in this work, there are some smaller ones as well that can really, bear the benefits quickly. I've highlighted a couple of these areas in orange here just to try and draw some attention to those. And the reason I've done that is that I think from the customers that I speak to, at least, a lot of those are fairly confident with trying to stop things from happening. So these more preventative controls, so trying to put the right firewall architecture in place, looking at encryption of data, and even the identity management side of things. People realize how important that is. I think what often lacks is the visibility when it comes to security, and definitely considering how you might respond if you were to suffer a security event. But overall, I would say do treat all of these fairly equally. They're all really important, and don't try to do everything all at once. You'll never achieve a perfectly secure system. So chunk this up and just go and start working on it. Just try and prioritize and make a start. This is another view of it here on the right as well, so just emphasizing that the importance of both detecting and responding, as well as having the kind of earlier phases in place as well. So first of all, having a plan or a strategy and a set of principles, which is the directive side of things, and then prevention. Okay, really quick recap around the review process at Zen. So of course we offer well-architected services, so we spend a lot of our time working with our customers. The review process itself, I really must stress, this is not an audit, it's a discussion, normally around a whiteboard, potentially remotely right now, and where we really dive into what an environment looks like. We want to talk about the business background as well, but we get pretty quickly into whiteboarding the architecture of a system, and then we can dive off into all sorts of different areas, both in terms of what's a part of well architected, but also really driven by customer priorities as well. From there, we'll give you some feedback. We'll identify risks, and then we can potentially help with remediation as well. So Callum and his colleagues in the team will typically spend time with our customers, actually, working on improvements and mitigating these risks. And we've seen lots of success with that over our time working on AWS. This is a journey. We encourage customers to improve, to get rid of the really high risks first, and then to continue improving, and also to re-review in future as well, and just stay on top of all this, because we always find that customer environments change, AWS possibilities and services change as well. So this is a process that is really ongoing. In terms of the review process with Zen, of course, where we do remediate at least 25% of the critical issues, we can also claim for funding for $5,000 worth of credits from AWS as well, which is, of course, really welcome for this work. So that is it from Callum and I. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you found that useful. Do look out for the other webinars in the series, and also do please reach out if you'd like to arrange a review, or if you'd like to ask any questions or just clarify anything. We'd be really happy to help. Thanks again.
Thank you.